Good evening and welcome to the Pittsford Board of Education meeting. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the agenda this evening? Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Renee. Any edits? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Principals report. We have Menden Center Elementary with us this evening. Thank you for being here, Principal Clayton, and we have Rich Albano, our Vice Principal from Menden Center. Welcome. Just a quick thank you for the visit that we had at Menden Center last week. It was our first official visit back with staff, and we so enjoyed that and enjoyed visiting a couple of the classrooms for circle time, so that was a real treat for us. But thanks for being such warm hosts of the board and the central office team. Welcome.
So good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to have bragging rights for the past year for Menden Center and share with you some of the things that we've been working on. This was our welcome back photo, and it was our first principal book of the month and has been our mantra for the year to be you. You don't have to check who you are at the door. Be your best self, do your best work, and make a difference in the lives of others. So we've had as an umbrella focus culturally responsive instruction, but underneath that, three categories, and they all kind of overlap. So I'm hoping that by the end of my presentation, you'll be able to see how all of the pieces have fit together for us. And when we talk about culturally responsive instruction, we're talking about using rapport and trust in relationships to be able to push kids into their zone of proximal development and engage cognitively. It's really, everything is stemming from the relationships and the trust. So the social emotional learning work that we do, the academic routines that we have, and the ways we honor student voice all tie back to our culturally responsive instruction and the relationships we establish with our students. So just a couple of quotes that I really liked, because there are some misconceptions about culturally responsive instruction and what it really means. And these are from Zaretta Hammond's book. And I really like this. Trust is the culturally responsive teacher's secret weapon. Without the trust in relationships, you can't get your students to engage in the rigorous academic work and take the risks. And it's really been about that for us. Hearing our kids, learning who they are as learners, learning their backgrounds, their stories, honoring their linguistic differences, their cultural differences, the way that they learn, so that we can get the highest level engagement from them in the classroom. And thinking about not just time on task, but the cognitive engagement. They're willing to take the risks. The emotional engagement, they see relevance in the content and can make connections to what they're learning, as well as the hands-on piece. And this is the other quote that has been really important for us. In our first faculty meeting in September, we kicked off with this. The trusting relationship is the on-ramp to the kind of cognitive, high-level problem solving and higher order thinking we want our students to do. So student voice was a goal established by the district in the summer, and our ILT was charged with finding ways to honor student voice and then be able to celebrate that and share that. And we began with defining it, because we found that we couldn't really quantify it and have examples for it until we made it clear for ourselves what it meant. So our SEL started working on a definition. Then we stumbled upon a definition that we really liked. So what you see here is the infusion of thinking from a source. It's called Student Voice, a Growing Movement Within Education That Benefits Students and Teachers, along with our own thinking. So we really think about voice as a two-pronged thing. It's the student expression of values, opinions, beliefs, and perspectives, but it's also how our instructional approaches and techniques are based on what we know about our kids. And we can only know that if we've honored their voices. And it's also the voices of their families and the work that we do behind the scenes, getting to know our kids and who they are sitting in front of us each and every day. So as you got to participate in, we start our day with class meetings. And the class meeting has 4 components. And we always say the most important of those 4 is the greeting, because this is the chance that every child hears their name said positively by a peer every day. The children choose all different types of greetings. It might be in a different language. It might be some sort of handshake, but they look each other in the eye, they greet each other by name. They change positions in the circle so they're not just memorizing a couple of friends' names, and it's a wonderful way to start. Then there's some sort of sharing. It might be an open-ended question. It might be something that's happening at that period of time that's significant in the lives of our elementary students. It's a sharing, and it's also created by either the teacher or the students can bring an idea to share. Then there's a quick activity like you saw with 4 Corners when Mr. Pirro got out immediately from the 3rd graders. That was fun for them. They're still talking about it. And then there's a morning message from the teacher.
And there was peeking, I think, the child peeking.
Yes. And you also told the child he would have to go to school on Superintendent's Day. He did not believe you. The morning message is really neat, too, because it has academic ties as well. So, for instance, in our 1st grade classrooms, the morning message might be close, where they leave some words out. So it's predictive text, and the kids have to predict which words are going to come next. Or it might be content-related vocabulary. So there's a lot of academic connections in the 15 minutes that happen with morning meetings. So not only are you building community in the classroom, it's a direct link to the work that they'll be doing for the day. And the classroom meetings are imperative in order for the circles to work, which is the next piece. So in our school, we do 2 types of circles, community building and restorative. And if we were to break it down percentage-wise, about 80% of our circles are community building, about 20% are restorative, which would mean decision-making or problem-solving. Some of the circles that we've had with kids are around things like being competitive at recess, and how do you manage your competitive streak and not harm others' feelings, and how do you engage in games in an appropriate way. Or it might be about taking another person's perspective, or how to establish and maintain friendships, how to honor differences. So any number of things might happen during these circles. And this work really began with our behavioral specialists, counselors, psychologists, mental health team, folks that had training in circles, pushing into classrooms and then leading them, and then doing it co-leading them with the teacher, and then pulling back so the teacher was leading them. So we've had folks that have been formally trained from Peary for the circles, but then people that have been informally turnkey trained as well. Another big part of our social emotional learning is our Principals Book of the Month, and we try to choose topics that are really relevant K through 5, but that the kids can take the discussions and the meaning in varying levels of sophistication and directions depending on the grade level. So, for example, one of our books was Perfectly Norman, a story about a little boy who has this beautiful set of wings, but he's ashamed of them and he hides them under an overcoat for a length of time. And it isn't until he is brave enough to take off his overcoat and show his wings and become accepted that he feels his true self. And so one of our 1st graders writes, "I am perfectly Quinn, I make others belong." That was one of our 1st graders. And then a 4th grader, or a 3rd grader actually, "I am perfectly blank because I have ADHD, so I have stronger emotions than others. I also have hyper-focus, so I can get very focused on something and not want to stop doing it. I'm also very sensitive. That's why I'm perfectly me." And this is the kinds of writing that our kids are engaging in, and this is hanging on this child's locker publicly for everyone to see. And to me, that's such growth and excitement in terms of the voice and the inclusivity and the engagement we're seeing in our kids, because there's a vulnerability there, but they feel safe doing that. Behind the scenes, the adults with the social emotional learning, one important thing that we did this year was our relationship mapping. And every child received an index card. We asked them who their trusted adult was in the school, and the children would answer on the card, and then we took the cards and sorted through to identify any children that didn't identify a trusted adult. And then our building did the work of ensuring that every adult kind of adopted a student that didn't have a connection, to intentionally be curious about the child, make the connection, develop the relationship. We don't want any child experiencing a year at Mendon Center not feeling connected. And the other part of that we've talked a lot about is the peer-to-peer relationships. So when we do our class placements, it's really important that we know that there's peer connections as we're building our classes, as we have new students move in, thinking about how we're going to build those peer connections. And again, the class meetings and the circles and all of that work really lifts the level of the relationships that we're seeing. We also have a care team that Rich chairs, and that meets weekly, and it's our mental health team along with our school nurse and our student services teacher. And it's basically a rundown of the student body for the week. Who we worried about this week? Who seems to have some bumps in the road? Who could use some extra TLC? Who might need a little more modeling or support? And it's almost like creating a game plan for those children for the week. And every week it's a new agenda. And the other thing that we started doing is if there's a particular class that's struggling as a collective group, a teacher can come and interact with the care team around their entire class, and then we can put interventions and ideas into place for that particular classroom to help. This is the time of year where we see some classes beginning to struggle as it's April and we have days feeling like June. So got to get it in check a little bit. So the other important piece, there's the relationship building and the trust, and once you have that, then it's the engagement in the predictable academic routines. One real gift that we have in our mathematics program is our number corner. And we have different resources that we draw from for our math instruction, but this is something that's consistent in the K-5 classrooms, although the topics may be different dependent on the grade level. I've tried to capture, so Denise Zobel, Standards Leader for Math, does this wonderful Teams page where she does a summary of the number corner activities by grade level, by month, and it is amazing. And this is an example at third grade. So they do a calendar grid every day, and they're recording observations from the grid. But their observations end up revealing a lot of mathematical understandings that then tie into their curricular work. Because this number corner is in addition to math instruction time. It's 15 minutes a day. It's a hard stop when you're done because you could spend your entire day doing number corner, literally could. There's so many options and resources. But to hear the students thinking, the vocabulary they're using, how they're engaging with mathematics from this routine has been just so powerful. They also do something called calendar collectors. So there's a recording sheet there where they were collecting fractions of an hour, and they would spin a spinner and they would determine what number was spun. Based on that number, how many minutes is that, what fraction of an hour is it, how many minutes have they collected. They're writing them on number lines. There's a huge number line piece. There's a computational fluency piece. And there's also problem solving. So it's just amazing, and I wanted to highlight that for you because it's been a real gift to all of our classes. The other part that's been really integral in our work has been our Read-Alouds. And as you know, with a lot of the work we're doing with our social justice standards or our diversity and our equity work, a lot of it at the elementary level stems around high quality literature and discussions. And the teachers were really kind to me and allowed me into their classrooms. I set a challenge for myself. So I've now done over 50 read-alouds, but my challenge was to pick a different title for every read-aloud. And I chose texts that were intentionally developmentally appropriate, high-quality writing and illustrations, but also tied to content they were learning, but also that integrated real-world issues in a developmentally appropriate way. And then I would read and engage with the children, and then we would do a quick write or an entry in their writer's notebooks, and then I collected all these work samples, almost like they were my classroom since September. So now have student writing samples for over 50 texts that are representative of all grade levels K-5, but all different kinds of themes and topics. And it's been fascinating to choose the text, because that's the work our teachers are doing very much now, is how do I choose high quality literature to put in front of the children that will engage them in the courageous conversations that are developmentally appropriate. So I just kind of put myself out there front and center to lead the work with them. And it's been really great too, because there's been some uncomfortable conversations, and it's been fun to kind of navigate that sitting beside a teacher and then debrief after and say, wow, that was a really, we didn't expect it to go that direction, or what a great question, or so it's been just really amazing work. I've enjoyed it so much. Here's just a couple examples of some quick writes the kids have done. What does it mean to be brave? This is a second grader. Being brave means taking a risk or doing what you're scared of. Being brave is also the antonym of scared. You can be brave when you're in a play, singing or saying, I love you, to someone you love. And a quick write lasts like 2 to 3 minutes. It's low stakes writing. It's thinking on the page. The whole push with the low stakes on-demand writing is that writing is thinking. So we encourage our kids to make their thinking visible on the page. That's exactly what these quick writes have done. But the way our students have developed as writers as a result of them is amazing. So we read a book about a true story about a crow that a family adopted, and it did all these cool things. And at the beginning of the story, the crow was really misunderstood and nobody liked them. And so I asked the kids, what do you feel is misunderstood in your life, a person or a thing? And just to show you an example of the quality of writing, this was like a 2-minute writing, but you can see the organization and the voice in it. So raccoons are really misunderstood animal. A lot of people think they're thieves, but they're really smart and scavengers, just like crows. Did you know raccoons can open doors? They're also really clean for eating trash. If they find a river, they sometimes wash themselves, and if they catch something in the river, they might wash it off. I have a river in my backyard. I saw a raccoon catch a crayfish and wash it off. Raccoons should not be disliked. And that's just like a quick on-demand, usually you see this writing go all through the writing process, and it takes forever. You need a topic, sentence, and a closing, and our kids are just doing it spontaneously, which is so much fun. Here's just a little quick, if you could do anything to help, what would you do? And this is just a first grader. I would help the world to be safe. So just to share an example of like the power of the student voice and our use of literature, I was reading in one 4th grade class, Let the Children March, and it was the true story of children marching in Montgomery, Alabama, because their parents were worried about losing their jobs, or their teachers were worried about losing their jobs, so the children marched. And I asked them at the end to think about what's something in your life that's unjust, and how could you, as a child, make a difference? So one student wrote to me, to stop war, children could write about peace and how peace is great. Peace is something we need. Why? Because war is a horrible act of life. We could appreciate what we have. We put hundreds and hundreds of people in danger with war. Let's join in the writing of peace. Each student could write on a page of their vision of peace, and we could, and why we need it, and we could send them to the Ukraine. So I met with the student after, and we came up with this idea of just writing messages of hope on postcards, and our art teachers are doing watercolor, sunflowers, and paintings, and then at ILT, we discussed how the teachers are going to write like a message of hope in all the classes K-5, and then we're going to pair up with a school or connection in Ukraine so the kids can mail their postcards off. And it's a way to do it with, like, we're not discussing war, graphic, inappropriate things. We're talking about how to make a difference in the lives of others, and it's an idea that came from a child. And it just came from that intersection of social emotional learning, academic routines, and honoring student voice. Just a couple other quick examples of student voice. We had a first grade teacher order a worry monster on Amazon and tuck it in the back of her classroom. And she did this big lesson about we can put our worries in the worry monster. It's there for us. And kids seemed invested in the discussion, but not much happened. And a few days later, a student came up to her and said, "Are you going to look in the monster?" She didn't realize the kids had been writing, and so when she opened the monster's mouth, it was stuffed full of Post-it notes of worries of first graders. So here's just one. I'm worried the teacher is never going to call me up to share. That's just, that little Post-it is just one that was stuffed in the worry monster. Everything from something, worrying about something at home to worrying about something at school. And it was just such a cool way for first graders to practice their writing and share their thinking and their voice. Here's just another, like a morning warm up in a class, what makes me feel cared for at school. And this child wrote, "What makes me cared for at school is when someone wants to try my idea." But you'll see students goal setting and having it on their desk. You see students generating questions around units of study, like our Wolf unit in science in third grade. The kids generated all the questions for that, and then they categorized all their questions. So you can see on the Post-it the categories that they had. And also the children just doing some heart mapping about things that are close to their heart that they could write about. So just looking ahead, continuing our emphasis on that culturally responsive instruction and our relationships, supporting our students' social emotional needs, but also remaining responsive with our instructional practices. Because the predictability and the rigor is as much of a gift to the children as the relationships are, but they have to go hand in hand. And that's work we've really been doing all year. And I just love this photo. I wanted to show you this. About 2012, all the children did self-portraits, and they're all mounted on the wall at Mendon Center. And when our graduates came back, they all ran to the wall to find the portrait they had done when they were in elementary school and took selfies. So you see these kids that, like, their heads are scraping the ceiling, crouched way down low, taking a selfie with their portrait. So it just really illustrates how we have the little ones, but you make such a profound difference that they take with them all the way K-12. So thank you for the opportunity to share all of this with you. And if you ever want to have coffee, I have like a stack of work samples to laugh at with you. It's been a lot of fun, and it's really been a great year to get back to normal. And we just thank the board for all of your support. Do you have any questions?
Anyone have any questions at the table? Comments?
I have a quick comment, Heather. What's so impressive, so we all went to Mendon Center. We went into the classrooms, and we saw what you displayed. And it's hard for anyone that's watching to truly conceptualize what happens in the classrooms. And so when you see 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds greeting each other and singing and dancing and circling in different languages, it's really heartfelt, and it's amazing how cultural our students are at age 5 when given that opportunity. And we saw that at Mendon Center nonstop. The other thing that I'm really impressed with is that cultural responsiveness in the classroom is not separate from rigor in the instruction.
Correct.
There's a huge connection between the two.
Yeah.
And so, as you quickly alluded to in one of your annotations, is you can have both.
Yeah.
And be a very rigorous, have a very rigorous program.
Yes.
And also have a culturally responsive classroom
Yeah.
at the same time. And what we saw at Mendon Center was both. was the infusion of rigor and students, oh my goodness, old school things, looking at each other in the eyes
Yeah.
and saying hello to each other, shaking hands in English, in Spanish, in other languages, but seeing that connection between kids that is so lost, I feel. It was so refreshing to see how respectful the culture was at Mendon Center and how rigorous the curriculum at the same time was. You've struck a great balance there, and I'm really appreciative of all you do.
Thanks for the opportunity to do it. I have to give a shout out to the entire staff, from food service to bus drivers to clerical to everybody. I mean, it takes a village, and we're just really good as working as a team. And everybody has a hand in the children's development, and I don't see it working any other way.
So one last thought. When we were all standing there greeting all the kids coming in at once off the buses,
Yeah.
you just want to capture that every single day, to be able to see, and I think, Sarah, you had said that, but standing there and seeing all of their faces come in and want to talk to you and engage with you, and so happy to be there. It was evident from what we witnessed when they got off the buses. It was a great moment.
It's the best part of every day, wouldn't you agree? Yeah. I lost my tooth. I got a haircut. Look at my toy.
Exactly.
If you get stressed, you just
Exactly.
have to walk down the hall and some 5-year-old will set
Yeah.
you straight. So
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
Well, you made our week, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, may I have an approval of the minutes from April 5th? Thanks, Robin and Sarah. Any edits there? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Board of Education reports. We are coming to a close with Monroe County School Board's meetings. You can see the dates there. We do, Deb, I have to correct the fact that we don't have a date for communications outreach. We do. So it is the 4th of May, and that will be developing talking points on board service. Dates to remember. We have the 10th of May, which will be our next board meeting. And that's it for reports. Financial report. Darren.
Thank you. The only thing I have is the award of a construction contract to Elmer Davis for the repairs of the Transportation Department roof, part of our $6 million project the voters voted on about a year ago.
May I have a motion, please? Thanks, Jeff. And Renee, questions about that? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. That was quick for you tonight. No, I don't. Human Resource Report. Sean.
Good evening. First, for your consideration, we have the professional staff report. There you will see 1 certificated staff increase in FTEs, 1 supervisory technical appointment, 1 teacher resignation, 1 school nurse teacher resignation.
May I have a motion, please? Sarah? Renee? Any questions for Sean? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Next for your consideration is the support staff report. We have 2 clerical resignations, 1 custodial appointment, and 1 food service worker resignation.
May I have a motion? Thanks, Jeff and Robin. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. And finally, for your consideration, we have a new position with the title of Assistive Technology Specialist, which will replace the Assistive Technology Consultant contract, as our consultant will be retiring at the end of the year. So this is a certificated staff position, will be a 0.5 FTE and be cost neutral.
May I have a motion? Sarah? Renee? We're missing 2 people at the table if people haven't noticed. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Curriculum report, Melanie.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here tonight, and thank you for your patience. I was supposed to be presenting this report to you at the last meeting, and I was unable to attend at our last meeting. So I'm glad to be here tonight, and I'm really proud of the opportunity to share this work with you, because what I'm going to share with you tonight really is a reflection of several years of some pretty significant work embarked upon by the members of our science department. And so there's some exciting things that have been happening, and preparing for this tonight really gave me the opportunity to reflect on a lot of the work that's been taking place over the last several years in the area of science. So I want to start by just kind of anchoring the conversation in the mission statement for our science education program here in Pittsford. This mission statement was actually developed by K-12 teachers of science about 9 years ago, as we were in all departments going through the process of really thinking about what we most value about our curriculum and what we want students to take with them as they move through our system and then leave our system. And so these statements are really intended to inform any decision-making about the program, writing of curriculum and assessments, professional learning for science teachers, et cetera. And interestingly, these were developed prior to the release of the new science standards that I'm going to be talking with you about, but they very much reflect a lot of the thinking and the demands that the new science standards place on our students and our teachers. The mission statements are accompanied by transfer goals, and these are the skills that we expect kids to develop and carry with them as they leave us. So that those abilities to generate open-ended questions of their own and look for answers, carry out investigations, communicate, defend logical explanations, and use their scientific knowledge and understanding to inform ethical decisions. The mission statement and transfer goals for science really reflect our commitment to developing scientifically literate citizens rather than or in addition to kids who know a lot about science. So it's really thinking about what's the importance, what's the value that we place on this program while our students are with us. Several years ago now, and I'm going to show you a timeline in a few minutes, New York State did adopt a new set of science standards. These came on the heels of a national release of science standards in New York, being New York, kind of tweaked them a little bit, made them their own, and released them, and they are called the P12 Science Learning Standards. You might hear them referred to as the Next Generation Science Standards. That's the national title, and again, the adjustments that New York State made were not significant in any ways. But these standards are significantly different from the standards that had previously been released in, I think, 1996 that we had been operating off of, in that they really describe the learning that's expected to take place in science education in schools as being about a description of performances rather than a list of information or a list of content that the kids would learn about. They refer to these standards as being about three-dimensional learning, and it's all about, again, developing those scientifically literate citizens, kids who understand science deeply enough to be able to transfer that knowledge to new and novel situations. These are the three dimensions around which the standards are built: the science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, and disciplinary core ideas. The science and engineering practices are listed for you here. These are woven K-12 throughout the standards and therefore throughout our programming and all of our building. These are skills that have leverage in that you will see that they apply actually not just to science and engineering coursework, but to math coursework, social studies, English, the arts, etc. These are all skills that we expect kids to be developing and applying in all disciplines as they move through our programming. The cross-cutting concepts really form the backbone of and spiral throughout our science program. These are really important concepts around which just about everything in science can be applied to. So we look and talk about patterns in any kind of life science course, in any physical science course. Every one of these cross-cutting concepts are reflected in the science standards K-12 all sciences. patterns, cause and effect, scale, proportion, and quantity, systems and system models, energy and matter in systems, structure and function, and stability and change of systems. These are the concepts around which all of the standards are organized. And then finally, that third dimension of the science standards are the disciplinary core ideas. So this is that content piece of the standards, but the P12 science standards are have very explicitly said to us that it's not possible to teach kids everything there is to know in any one of the science arenas. And so they have focused us in on particular aspects of that discipline knowledge so that kids get depth over breadth and learn to become scientifically literate citizens and contributors to the scientific community. So the timeline that accompanied the release of these standards by the state, and I have to say this timeline was revised a year ago because COVID interrupted the timeline as they had originally laid it out. The standards were adopted by New York State in December of 2016, and by July of 2017, school districts were supposed to be in that initial transition stage, which is really what the state describes as this is when you need to tell people that new standards are coming and begin to take a look at them and think about how they'll impact your program. In March of 2018, the state released a science roadmap, which really laid out the testing changes significantly and how we needed to be looking at how courses would follow one another. These were designed to assist us with that transition, and this was about the time where in Pittsford we began some gradual implementation of new elementary science units and the mapping out of new curriculum maps for middle school science. So we've been at this work in terms of curriculum and instructional changes since at least March of 2018. According to the state, September 2019 through this June that we're fast approaching is phase 2 of the transition stage. And for us, this has meant continued implementation of new science curriculum at the elementary level and the implementation of new curriculum 6 through 8. Timeline continues, saying that by September of 2023, we're continuing phase 2, and for us that will mean that we are looking at and revisiting our earth science and living environment curriculum maps. That will be followed the following year by revising chemistry and physics curriculum maps, and the state has indicated that by September of 2025 we should be at full implementation. That is a 2-year delay from the original plan because of COVID. So part of what this has meant, and I apologize these don't show up well on the screen, this coming June will be the last administration of the grade 4 science test that's aligned to the 1996 science learning standards. So our kids in 4th grade this year will be the last 4th graders to take that test. It's a 2-part test. It's a written test that they take in June, and it's a performance task test that they take in late May. The kids actually really enjoy the performance part of the assessment. They move station to station, and they do activities that really demonstrate their understanding of science K through 4. So this June is the last administration for that. Next June will be the last administration of the grade 8 science test that's aligned to those 1996 standards. It mirrors the grade 4 test. In June of 2025, we will see the first administration of the new Regents exams for earth science and biology, and in June of 2026, the first administration of Regents exams for chemistry and physics. So what has this meant for us in terms of our instruction? When the standards were rolled out, we spent a fair amount of time they're very complicated looking documents. They're not written in a particularly easy to digest way. There's lots of color-coded columns and keywords and coding and whatnot. So it took a while for standards leaders, department leaders, just teachers to really get their arms around the implications of those standards. But what we quickly recognized was the significant instructional shifts that are required by these new standards. So of all of the disciplines, of all of the departments that have had new standards rolled out from the state over the last 10 or 11 years, and that would be every single discipline around which we teach, including all of our electives programs, the shifts reflected by the new science standard are by far and away represent the biggest lift of all. because the change is not just about the what that our teachers will be teaching, but it's very much about the how that they will be approaching their instruction. So we made some deliberate decisions to, particularly at the secondary level, to begin the instructional shifts prior to any change in the curriculum content itself. We wanted teachers to get comfortable with pedagogical changes with content they were comfortable with before making instructional shifts at the same time that they were making any content shifts. That was particularly important at the middle school, where our curriculum maps really required us to move pieces of content into different grade levels. So we're accustomed to thinking, for example, about sixth grade science as being life science, and seventh grade we tend to refer to as chemistry, and then eighth grade as physics. Well, that's not the case anymore. Those core content areas have been woven throughout the 6th through 8th science experience. So teachers were getting new pieces of content that they hadn't previously taught and making instructional shifts at the same time. So those instructional shifts also moved up into the high school prior to any curricular changes being made there. The instructional shifts are really well described, I think, by these next two slides, and I don't take credit for what's here. These come from some documents that accompany the Next Gen Science Standards that I think really do an excellent job of describing the difference in what science instruction used to look like under the 1996 standards or before to what science instruction needs to look like as we move into full implementation of the new standards. So on the left-hand side of the chart, you really see kind of a list of things that kids will learn. So kids essentially will learn this, they'll learn this, they'll learn this, and a lot of that learning may take place, some of it by experiential work, but some of it also by reading, by being told, et cetera. But it's very much, these are the facts, it's a very fact-based kind of curriculum in the old standards. The new standards are very much about doing, about applying, about synthesizing, about designing, and digging really deeply with the content. Much more rigorous, but also much more engaging for all students. So much more interesting to have students design, build, and refine devices to optimize the conversion of energy than just have kids calculate energy transfer. Right, so the descriptors on the right, which represent the new standards and some of the kinds of work kids should be engaged in, really are much more rigorous, but also much more engaging. They pique kids' interest. They apply to their real-life situations. This just continues it with the other strands of the science standards. So when kids, even students who don't necessarily tend to see themselves or be seen by others as having a strong aptitude for science, are engaged in the kinds of learning experiences that are described on the right-hand side of the table, those kids in turn become much more actively engaged in the learning process. They're interested, they're curious, they want to find the answers. They have some choices that they get to make about their learning. They see how the science concepts apply to their real life. And so it becomes a much richer learning environment for all students. So a couple of quick examples of what some of those instructional shifts look like in our classrooms. There is a task that is done in some of our biology classrooms. It's called the Marathon Challenge. And this is a task that kids are given as they begin the unit of study on body systems and homeostasis. So this doesn't come after all of the teaching has taken place. The task is presented up front. So this is how we enter into this unit of learning. Kids are given this scenario that the New York City Marathon takes place on a really, really hot day. After completing the race, one of the finishers drops dead. Kids are given packets of data, and they're given data kind of staged out, and some background information about the human body and homeostasis. And given that information, then kids have to do the investigation to figure out possible causes of death. So now they have a reason for learning about those body systems and homeostasis and what homeostasis really means and why it's such an important concept in terms of keeping anything alive, right? Because they want to figure out why this person dropped dead at the end of the marathon. So a much more engaging way. I will True confessions, I was a biology teacher. I remember vividly. I have terrible bad memories about standing up and teaching kids one body system at a time, and how bored I became teaching it that way. And if I had only known and thought to present kids with an engaging task like this, we all would have been happier in class probably and been doing better learning. So another task, this is kind of an interesting one, and it's accompanied by some videos, which I will not show you because they will potentially turn your stomach. But the task is called Crickets in My Lunch. So kids not only read about the use of crickets for human consumption, but they do watch videos about various and assorted interesting things that people in different parts of the world naturally eat as part of their diet. So things that we in this country might really find unusual or maybe offensive, but are very much a part of diets around the world. And kids have to come up with a response to the question, how can the addition of crickets make school lunches more nutritious? And so they have to apply their learning about digestion, macronutrients, our energy needs, et cetera, to make a case for why crickets would actually be a very good thing to add to our lunch menu. So if any of you have had children come home and ask to be served crickets, now you know why. Hey?
So Melanie,
Yes?
for the record,
Mm-hmm.
a couple of the board members and myself have eaten crickets
Oh, that's right.
as part of an elementary lesson.
That's right. You
Had
did.
PTSD. And from that.
So you don't want me to serve up crickets? Yeah, okay, all right. So that's just a couple of examples of tasks. And our science department is using some national resources to pull tasks that get kids engaged in this kind of work. Anytime you have curricular or instructional shifts, you also end up looking at your assessments, which is a really healthy practice to do. So several years ago, our science department was one of the departments that led the way in rethinking traditional midterms, and in fact replacing those traditional midterms with performance tasks, common performance tasks that are scaffolded and spread out over the course of the year. Those performance tasks are, of course, assessing student knowledge and understanding of content, but they're also assessing their understanding and ability to apply those science practices and their understanding of those cross-cutting concepts. So these are tasks where kids are expected to actually do the work of the scientists and not just answer lots of multiple choice Regents-looking questions. Kids do get practice with Regents-looking questions in order to prepare them for the exam. But the Regents exam is limited in terms of the scope of assessing all of the skills that we know kids need to have. So we've built these benchmarks in across the year. The Dynamic Earth benchmark is one of them from Earth Science. Kids apply their understanding of Earth Science and some data that they're given and some graphic information that they're given, and they have to make models and they have to develop a claim and evidence using some reasoning about a particular situation in a fault line in California. The disease case study is one that we use in our biology classes, and students there are asked to, they're given a choice. They're asked to do some research around a disease or a disorder, and they have to be able to present information about how the body organs and systems that work together are impacted by that disease. They have to come up with tests that a doctor would run for that. It's a very complex task that really asks kids to, again, not just describe and explain how each of the body systems works when it's working well, but really understand the impact of disease or disorder and how the systems work together. As the science teachers were working together, and I have to say that this was all work that was driven by the teachers themselves. They really wanted to infuse those practices and concepts into their assessment work. But they began to have conversations as they created the benchmarks, and the conversation really kind of went like this. So we're creating this benchmark. What do we want to add to the benchmark that we would give to the kids in the honors class that we wouldn't be giving to kids in the non-honors class? And every time they had that conversation and would come up with an idea, then they would say, no, but really we want all kids to be able to do that thing. So the benchmarks became the same for all of the classes, just like the Regents exam is the same for all of the classes. There was nothing that we valued enough to ask kids to do that we wouldn't ask all kids to be able to demonstrate learning at that level. So that really led to this again, very organic decision-making by the science teachers and the science department. And they engage in some conversation over several years about removing that honors designation from some of our science classes. It began with Earth Science in 2021, and then it has continued each year. So as students in this particular cohort move through these courses, they're just in now a cohort that does not have an honors designation. Traditionally, the honors level courses had more content. So they might have an additional unit of study, more content that the kids had to learn. But the new science standards are not about more content. They're about deeper understanding of the most important content in the discipline. They're about the integration of those disciplinary core ideas, the cross-cutting concepts, the science practices. We need a science program that expects that kind of learning for all of our students, not for some of our students. And that was where the science teachers really landed in this work. The removal of the honors designation is not in any way about lowering standards for some kids. It's about raising the expectations and the level of learning for all students in our science courses. So I've got a chart here, which may be a little bit hard to read, particularly from the audience, and I apologize for that. But this shows you where this is all of the school districts on the east side of Monroe County and their science offerings in terms of earth science, living environment, chemistry, physics, and then their AP sciences. And if you look at the chart, what this will show you is that other than one district on the east side of Monroe County, there are no districts, other districts that continue to offer honors level Regents classes, other than Brighton is running just an honors biology, but not honors earth science or honors chemistry anymore. What you'll also notice on the chart, and I'm just going to step over here for a minute, here, in Pittsford, we offer a greater number of AP or college level science courses than any other school district on the east side of Monroe County. Our course that traditionally had been called Physics Honors has been renamed and adjusted a little bit for next year to College Physics. So you see it up there, the second row from the bottom. The honors physics course was always significantly different from the Regents physics course, and the same cannot be said for for earth science, living environment, and chemistry. The honors physics course prepared kids for the option of taking an AP exam. It was not required. Kids still had to take the Regents physics exam, but the content was significantly enough different that kids were also prepared to take an AP exam if they chose to do so. What we're doing next year with honors physics is, again, making an adjustment, calling it college physics to represent the fact that, as always, when it was physics honors or college physics, it requires kids to have college-level algebra abilities. So there's a much higher level of math requirement for college physics than for Regents physics. We have entered into an agreement with Monroe County Community College, so kids taking college physics in Pittsford will be eligible, should they choose, to receive up to 8 credits of 8 college credits for college physics starting this coming year. So that's a little difference, and I think there's one other district up there that runs a college physics program in the same way that we'll be running it. But you can see the kind of the course offerings there. Our sequence of study here in Pittsford is laid out. This is exactly what you see in our program of studies book on the right-hand side, the graphic there. Important to keep in mind that approximately 40% of our students every year accelerate into earth science in 8th grade. So they begin this actual sequence in 8th grade, and the remaining students begin the sequence in 9th grade. Acceleration into earth science in 8th grade is acceleration. It was never an honors class. It was always just, I'm taking earth science a year early. In addition, every year some students, and when I say some, it's quite a number, with the support of their teachers and counselors, are allowed the opportunity to double up in science. So they might take biology and chemistry concurrently. They might take earth science and biology concurrently, and then that gives themselves more opportunities to take AP and or other electives beginning as early as 10th grade if they double up in science in 9th grade. So we do have quite a number of students who double up in the sciences to further accelerate and open up more opportunities for science study. Our science electives offerings are here as well. So these are not Regents courses. They are not AP courses. They are electives. Most of them are semester-long classes, and they really give kids an opportunity to take something of high interest and sort of specialize in. I've also included for you information about our AP Science enrollment over the last several years and our anticipated enrollment based on course requests for next year. You see a little dip in the AP Science course enrollment during the 2021 school year. That's the gray bar. That, as I'm sure you need no reminder of, was the year that we were in hybrid or fully remote learning. We were not able to offer the full complement of AP Science classes to our kids who chose to be fully remote. So you see some drop of enrollment there, and then that crept back up this year, and then we see really healthy course requests for our AP courses next year. Our AP exam performance, of course, continues to be high. This is always part of one of the reports that I give to you every fall, and we will certainly, as always, continue to monitor our performance in the AP Sciences as well. Our next steps here are that we will, of course, continue our curriculum and assessment revisions to continue to align with the P12 science learning standards. We'll continue the professional learning to support the teachers. As I said, these are really significant instructional shifts that they're getting their arms around and providing really great experiences for our kids. We will certainly monitor our student performance in earth science, biology, and chemistry by looking at not only Regents exam results, but how those exam results line up against in-class performance. We'll monitor AP Science enrollment trends and performance data, and then if any adjustments are necessary, we will, of course, make those adjustments. Our goal always is to make sure that all students see themselves as capable learners in the area of science as well as all disciplines, and that we open up opportunities and no student ever feels like they are not eligible to take an advanced level coursework in any discipline. So with that, I will entertain any questions that you might have.
You can ask the question if you have a card filled out. Did you fill out a card? Okay. You'll have an opportunity during public comment. Okay. At the board table, a question. Melanie, I think there was a perception way back when my kids were in high school, by taking, you had to take, not have to take, but in their minds, they thought that they had to take an honors class to advance to AP. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So when kids are doing their course selections for the upcoming school year, it's about what they're interested in, but it is also about their teacher recommendation. And so while in the sciences, there hasn't been, at least for the last several years, an official statement in our program of studies booklet that says that in order to take, for example, AP biology, you must have taken honors bio or honors chem. You do need teacher recommendation, you need to have performed well, but I think the reality is that for lots of kids, if they were not in an honors class, they did not see themselves as being AP material. And so they were receiving messages kind of early on in their academic career that they weren't the kind of kid that should be in an AP class, that would be able to be successful with the learning in the AP class. And our belief is that all kids should believe that they can challenge themselves to that level if that's what they're interested in doing. Our goal is not to increase the number of students who take APs overall, but our goal is to make sure that every student who wants to challenge themselves in that way feels that that door is open and that we will support that choice. And so if the removal of an honors designation while maintaining a very high level of expectation for learning of all students and providing supports for all students helps to open that door for some students, then I welcome that, because I don't want kids to think that they don't deserve the chance to challenge themselves in that way.
I also have another question. So when students are applying to colleges, has this been a detriment to any students that you're aware of?
No, and these conversations about the honors designation and these decisions were not made by the science teachers in a silo. They did come from the science teachers who know their content, know the kids, know the experiences best of all. And they really had a goal of saying, we believe all kids need to be doing this high level of learning, and we want all kids to be working together. We see that that's really helpful for the kids when they have an opportunity to be interacting with each other, hearing those divergent questions that honestly sometimes don't come up in some settings. But our process requires that the standards leader brought those that recommendation to our secondary academic council. And so that is made up of all 4 secondary principals, all of our core area standards leaders, a few of us at the central office team, some other standards leaders, and really important to this conversation, our counselor department heads. So particularly our 2 high school counselors, department chairs, were very much a part of this conversation, and they have lots and lots of experience. And obviously, as a high school counselor, a significant part of their job is to be looking at college admissions for kids. They absolutely supported this move. They don't see any detriment. The reality, and I've had lots of conversations with the counselors about this, not just as it relates to this conversation about science, but in lots of different ways. When kids apply to college, I think we sometimes think that, our experience is here in Pittsford, and we know what our course offerings are, and we know what our report cards look like, and our transcripts look like, and we make assumptions that every kid who's applying to college, everything looks the same. And in fact, every single school district looks different. Kids have different opportunities. Grades are calculated in almost as many different ways as you have teachers out there, right? So the college admissions office takes that information. They take our high school profiles, and they have a way of making sure that they're comparing apples to apples. So they kind of filter out those differences. And what it comes down to a lot of times is our kids who are applying to selective universities, are they challenging themselves to the ability that they can challenge themselves within the program of studies that their high school offers? Students are never penalized in the college admissions process by attending a high school that doesn't have AP classes or that doesn't have honors classes. When my kids were in high school, my daughter had a friend who was in a high school in Indiana, had no AP classes at all. That friend went to Cornell University. Cornell University understood that the high school she was in didn't provide her those opportunities, looked at all of the other components of her application process. So no, our counselors are not worried that this is going to have any negative impact on admissions at all.
Anyone else?
I do.
Okay.
Melanie, so as a father who has a junior and a freshman in college, I would concur with that. At our last board meeting, there was a public comment around doing away with all of our honors programs. And I've had several comments from parents saying, why are you getting rid of all your honors programs? Can you talk to that?
Sure. We're not getting rid of all of our honors programs. I think that what's happening in science is really a reflection of the new standards themselves, which require very different kinds of instruction and assessment and learning from all kids. We've never had, for example, an honors ninth grade social studies class, right? Every ninth grader walks in, takes Global 9. And then after that, they begin to do some differentiation into Global 10 or AP World. We're not changing that. We're not looking at taking away our honors English classes. We are not looking at taking away our honors math classes at the high school level. We're looking at coursework, kind of taking every situation for itself and looking at what's best for kids, what's best for program, how do we best meet the demands of the standard. So this is not about doing away with honors across the board. In this particular case, this is about, again, it goes back to that question that the science teachers ask themselves. What would we want to ask our honors kids to do that we wouldn't expect all kids to do? The answer was nothing. If we want our honors kids to be having this kind of experience, that experience is one we want for all of our students, and we believe that they can learn at that level. those kinds of instructional experiences, some of those tasks that I shared with you there, those really well differentiate themselves for kids as well. So if you think about, for example, that disease case study, or the New York City, let's take the New York City Marathon one, the guy drops dead. A teacher can hold all kids responsible for successfully completing that task, but can work in differentiated ways to challenge some kids and to support other kids by providing different data sets, by sitting down and working with a group of kids to get them to where they need to be. But the reality is these standards expect all kids to be doing that kind of complex thinking. This is not about a decision the district has made to eliminate all of our honors programs at all.
And I would also just suggest that while we are all but one district who has one honors on the side for science, we would still consider, like we do with everything, should we change this sequence or...
Yep.
So this is brand new, and this is related to new standards, new expectation for kids, and like anything else, we want to monitor and adjust as appropriate.
We try never to have anything set in stone. No. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Special education report, Elizabeth.
Yes, Committee on Special Education and Preschool Special Education recommendations are on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Superintendent's report, Mike.
There is not a need for an executive session this evening. On the consent agenda, just like to highlight some gifts to the district. A donation of $7,600 from Calkins Road Student Council for the purchase of 6 water filling stations to be placed throughout Calkins Road Middle School, and a donation of $2,000 from NLS LLC to Thornell Road Elementary School, Odyssey of the Mind, to be used for OOTM Global School Competition. For discussion, we have policy recommendation, reading number 1, 7510, District Wellness Policy. If there's any questions there.
I have one. It's very small. More out of curiosity than anything. But I noticed when we go down to, it is, let's see, letter E under, let's see, physical activity, active transport. I just noticed that it says the district will provide bike racks to store bikes during the school day, but it's crossed out. What was the rationale for that?
I believe that was because there were not bike racks at all of the schools that students were using.
Just checking. Thank you.
Yes.
Would also just like to, typically I don't single this out, but want to acknowledge one student's recognition. To inform you that Joy Shee was selected as one of 620 semifinalists to advance to the final round of the 2022 U.S. Presidential Scholarship Competition recognitions. The significance of this, she started with 3.7 million competitors. 5,000 students were identified of those as candidates in the program, and 620 semifinalists have been selected from across the country, which is where she is right now. So going from 3.7 million down to 620 semifinalists, which is amazing. To give you some background, students have the opportunity to become presidential scholars based on 3 paths of accomplishments. The majority of the scholars are selected on the basis of broad academic achievement. Approximately 20 students are selected on the basis of their academic and artistic scholarship in the visual arts, the performing arts, or creative writing. And approximately 20 additional students are selected on the basis of their ability and accomplishment in career and technical education. So we wish the best of luck to Joyce in this an amazing feat already. So regardless of the outcome, she's gone from 3.7 million to the top 620 semifinalists. So we applaud her efforts. The other thing I'd just like to close with, and especially as we approach the budget season and looking at our budget in totality, the complexity of schools today, and how important it is for school boards and all of us around this table and all 9 principals and all of our teachers to acknowledge the work that we need to do for all of our students. So we have pockets of students in every single category that are important to all of our parents. And all of our parents make up our community. And so we have students that we have to find support for academically. We have students that need support with mental health. We have students that are in need of support with special education. We have students that struggle socially. We have to provide support for students whose parents are going through divorce, parents that whose kids need help socially. We have to provide support for students that have a need for additional challenge. So the typical classroom experience isn't enough for them. We have students that thrive and need support through music, through sports, through every venue. And what we've been able to do in Pittsford year after year after year is do our best of trying to accommodate all of our different families and all of our different needs. We want to continue to do that. We want to continue to grow all of that. We also understand there's a basis where we can't just give everything to everyone, because there's certainly not an infinite amount of money to do that. But we do our best to provide support for a wide range of students, a wide range of needs, knowing that we're not going to meet every single student and parent every step of the way, but we want to do our best to provide the best that we can do for 6,000 students. So as we look at next week's or 2 weeks budget hearing, you're going to see a budget that provides the best we feel we can do to meet the needs of all of our students, to provide them a robust, rigorous program to meet them where they are, and to bring us back to quasi where we were pre-COVID, and we'll do our best to do that. So I want to thank everyone that's here tonight again for your participation, and look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please. Thanks, Renee and Robin. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Old business? New business? I do have a couple of announcements. I'm sure most of you are aware, at the table at least, that both Pete and I are not running for re-election this year. Pete did send in, of course he's not here this evening, but he sent in a message to the community that I'd like to read. It says, "Dear Pittsford community, thanks to your support, I've enjoyed the honor and privilege of serving as a Board of Education member for the past 12 years. The work over these 4 terms has been challenging, but so very rewarding. As I look around the board table, I see the same passionate commitment to our students as I've given throughout my tenure. So it's with confidence in our board and in our district's bright future that I formally announce that I will not seek re-election next month. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve." And then I'd just like to read a statement as well. So some of you, most of you at this table at least, recall that Sherry Johnson, who's the executive director of Monroe County School Boards Association, announced last August that she'll be retiring this July. Recently, I was selected to step in as Sherry's successor at MCSBA. While I'll miss serving the Pittsford community as a Board of Education member, I look forward to serving the greater Rochester community by supporting, educating, and advocating for our fellow board colleagues in public school districts across the county. It's been an honor to serve this community for the past 9 years. Working with and learning from those seated around this table and those who served before me has truly been a privilege. I'm extremely confident that my fellow board colleagues, Melanie, I can't even look at you, will carry on with our district initiatives, mission, and vision with continued integrity and dedication. I look forward to working with each of you in my new role.
Good job.
Okay, with that, I'm going to give the floor to other people. It is public comment. There are some new people in the audience. We do have rules of engagement. We have a 3-minute protocol for anyone who would like to have a public comment. We ask for your name, your address when you come up to the microphone, and we'll keep the time up here so you'll have a recorded time of how much time you have left. We just ask you to be courteous, to be respectful of one another. And again, you're addressing the board, not the audience. And if we're able to answer your question, we will do so. So I'm going to start with Dr. David Mock.
Thank you very much. I just have 2 questions, and actually one if I could ask you.
David, can I just ask for your address,
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry, 10 Brackenbury Road?
Thank you.
Just so I understand, because I've not been to the meetings before, are there provisions for laboratory work, hands-on, for chemistry, biology students in the middle school grades?
The requirements from New York State about laboratory minutes are applied to Regent science classes only. So in 8th grade, if students are taking earth science there, they do have a requirement for laboratory minutes. And then in high school as well, of course, for earth science, biology, and chemistry. There's a minimum requirement from New York State that all students have 1,200 minutes of laboratory experience over the course of the year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask one more? I guess I have one more
Sure, you
minute.
still have time.
Okay. I would like to request, because and maybe I'm missing this, but my wife and I, other parents we've talked to, we'd like to, I put 3 students through the schools before. We have a student in now. We'd like to hear more from the principals, teachers, et cetera, more communication about the curriculum in a real-time manner, maybe on a regular basis. We don't get it. So we really don't feel like we don't know what's going on. So I wonder if folks might address that. I think that could be improved.
Thank you. We will take that under consult.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you. Okay.
Thadaha Thavakumar.
Hi, my name is Thadaha Thavakumar. My pronouns are she, her, and I wrote my address on the card. I am speaking as a parent. Isolated incidents is my topic. How many do we need before we realize we have a systems issue? How many times does a Black student need to beg and ask for help before adults in a school will give and address the issue? Over the past few years, there have been numerous isolated incidences. They all carry a very similar theme. Marginalized students not feeling a sense of belonging, being bullied, and not being heard when they bring the issue up. The most recent incident happened right before break. A Black student over the last few months goes to various adults in the school, letting them know about an incident with another student. They go to the social worker, a teacher, the principal, etc., asking for help. They ask for help because a white student is constantly bullying and harassing them, saying things like that the student doesn't like those from the urban-suburban program, or that the student is physically pushing them in the hallway and also utilizing racial slurs. The same black student gets accused of stealing by another adult in the school on another occasion. Finally, before break, and after months of being bullied and harassed, the black student asks the white student what their problem is, and then the white student calls her a racial slur, and it becomes physical. Only one student gets disciplined. It's the student who asked for help over and over again for support. The one that was promised a restorative circle and some type of follow-up. The one that was racially traumatized was the one that was disciplined. How many isolated incidences do we actually need? How many traumatized students of color do we need before we realize we have a system problem?
This is a tough one to respond to. I think it's almost a dangerous statement that you made, to be quite honest. We're in the midst of investigations, and pretty significant that would contradict a lot of what you just shared. So I think we need to be cautious about when we make public comment, when we see violence in our schools, when we try to investigate, when we look at restorative practices. We try to do our best in every situation. What you just shared, I think, is concerning if you feel that that is the truth right now. This is an open investigation. Thank you.
Julia, Kai.
Good evening, Shuya Kai, Charlottesville Run. I sent an email to the superintendent and the school board regarding cancellation of the high school honors science programs. Thank you, Mr. Perro, for your lengthy response, but it did not address my two concerns. First, the Regents and honors programs are not mergeable, not exchangeable. The clear evidence is we can't rename the new programs as the honors program. Second, the current curriculum will hold back our students in prestigious STEM summer camp applications. I have heard many stories on how our STEM teachers have inspired our female students to pursue their further education in STEM. I'm proud to be a PCSD parent. This change, however, damages our female students in STEM development. It's a violation to equity. Not to mention, such an influential decision was not even discussed on school board meetings, nor among parents and students. And in comparison, the Brighton School District has taken steps in the name of so-called equity in the past couple years, such as cancellation of honors programs and the deliberate inflation of grades in order for some disadvantaged students to be AP eligible, even though they may not survive in AP courses. The consequence of this strategy is the frustration among accelerated students in their motivation and the spirit, and the reduction of AP quality. And the consequence that follows it is failure in college admissions. When educators in China talk about no child is left behind policy, they mean to help all children to catch up with their peers. The educators in the US, however, use a no child is left behind policy to lower the education standards. Our kids are no longer competitive globally, and I sincerely hope our educators and our school board can realize this problem. In addition, MIT and other colleges decide to reinstate SAT, ACT scores in the college admissions. It is time we strengthen our academic rigor instead of degrading it. And I'd like to comment corresponding to Dr. Ward's presentation today. The change of the state curriculum did not have the requirement to cancel the honors programs. And the content can be explained in an easy way and in a more complicated way. And this is exactly what the difference is between the Regents and the honors programs. And PCSD has always been a pioneer in our region, and I'm very proud of it. So instead of following other schools, I hope the PCSD don't follow these schools in all those new policies, and we can still maintain our excellence. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia.
So, Julia, I would share that one of the things that we are pioneers in that make us, I think, stand out a little bit more than other districts is our follow-through with our graduates. So the follow-up that we do with our students that are in college in years 5, 10, and beyond is pretty significant. So we do track how we're doing and how we prepare our students for college and what their feedback provides for us relative to what we may need to change moving forward. Our return on our surveys is significant. It's a pretty high return, and we look at what our students are also telling us as we make changes along the way. So these types of changes, all of our changes, are monitored and assessed with our student voice as they go through college. And I'm not sure, Jeff, if you want to add anything to that, or Melanie, if you want to add anything to that, or if it was captured globally.
I think you captured it well. I think that one of the reasons we put our graduate survey into place, and Jeff's office runs it for us, we survey kids right prior to when they graduate high school, 18 months out and 5 years out. And one of our purposes, amongst many, was to look at our college retention rate, because we've always known and tracked our college admission rate, but we really wanted to look at how our retention rate compared to districts across the nation. So we look at the percent of our kids who 5 years post-high school have actually graduated from college and are employed or in graduate school, and our retention rate is significantly higher than the national average. We do use information from those surveys, and it has informed us about new course proposals that have come forward, skills that kids feel they need more work in, and so we pay a lot of attention to what our kids are telling us about our programming through that survey, so thank you.
Jing, do? Oh, sorry, Jeff.
No.
Jeff, do you want to add something to that?
The only thing I was going to add, on top of our surveys that we do with our prior to grad, our 18-month and our 5-year out, is annually we track our national clearinghouse. So any student linked to a federally funded college, which is most in the country, we know over time, I would say for the last 15 to 20 years, how we fare comparatively speaking across the country and within our own cohorts. So if that data ever needs to be shared with this group beyond what we've done so before, we track that with great regularity.
Sorry, Jeff, I didn't mean to cut you off.
My name is Jing Ju, 8 Devonwood Lane. I don't have too much comments. I'm more than just a few questions. Actually, some of my questions already answered through the presentation, but I do want to share still the concern about this science owner program being canceled. So you did mention you taking the teachers' input, you take even some of the survey I just heard. I'm so glad heard. But one of the missing part may be taking the comments or the feedback from the parents of all the students. That's something I would like to, hopefully you can take. And then the question here is, if the change of the counseling owner science program is to remove the perceived barrier to AP enrollment, then we would like to know as a parents and of the students, we would like to know then what's the new prerequisite to enroll in AP classes? And how would the school maintain that high level standard? You mentioned the standard is still high. And then of those region courses to still help students well prepared to achieve a good result of the AP class. Enrolling increase doesn't mean their achievements is higher, right? That's something I also concern to the Board of Education here. And then last thing you mentioned to merge this region and owner program into one classes, then how would the teacher, would you share the curriculum? How would the teacher handle different learning capability of the group in one class? That may giving special challenge to the teachers, how they manage it. Some kids might get bored and some kids are still learning, then how they balance that. I don't see that into this merged region program. Yeah, thank you.
So I'm just going to say those are amazing questions. Those are spot on questions. Thank you for them, and I'm going to turn it over to Melanie. They are actually really great questions.
I so appreciate the interest in this topic. I think in terms of your last question about how a teacher can support kids at different learning abilities, I think the instructional shifts that our teachers are making to provide kids with more authentic experiences are those kinds of learning experiences that actually do better differentiate themselves, because they can give some kids additional information, more support, while other kids, they actually take away some pieces and make that particular task a little bit more challenging. So, and it is, I mean, that is the responsibility of the teacher to meet the needs of the students in their class. That's always been the responsibility. So I think the other part of the answer to that question is, just because you have a class in front of you that is an honors class or a Regents class, you still have a wide range of abilities and interests and skills within that class. So part of the responsibility of every teacher all day, every day, is to find ways to meet the needs of a variety of students in their class. The new standards, I think, actually provide more opportunities for that for our teachers, because they're expected to present content in very different ways than they were previously. And I've now forgotten your other really good questions at this point.
The other part, theoretically, is that more students will find themselves as scientists and be more engaged in the potential to see themselves as qualifying to take APs. So hopefully what we'll see is a higher level of rigor for all students, and we'll see a higher level of participation in our AP program as well.
Emily Kay.
Hello, Emily Kay, 6 Glenmore Circle. I want to take the opportunity to formally announce my intent to run for the Pittsford Board of Education. I know many of you from attending board meetings and other district events. A couple of you may even remember when I was a student at Pittsford Schools and my mom was on the school board, Kathy Sigler. I attended a lot of school board meetings then too. I enjoyed them, and I enjoy them now. All of those many board meetings that I attended, along with my experience in this district, has piqued my interest at being a part of this team, the school board. And in March, I attended the MIXPA Prospective Candidate Seminar, which really cemented my intention to run. As I mentioned, I am a graduate of Pittsford Schools, K through 12, as is my husband, Andrew Kay. We moved back to Pittsford 10 years ago to raise our family here, because we know that there are no better schools for our kids to attend and no better community to help raise them than we have here in Pittsford. 2 of my 3 boys now attend my old elementary school, Mendon Center, and my youngest will join them there in 2023. As both a Pittsford parent and a Pittsford alum, I recognize what a unique advantage a Pittsford education can be for our kids, and what an asset a strong, cohesive school district can be for our community as a whole. As an engaged parent and community member and an active PTSA member and volunteer, I believe I can add value to the board and help grow the district's tradition of meeting every student where they are, both academically and individually, and helping all of our kids to excel. I deeply believe in both this district's mission and its core values, and I look forward to being an active participant in the district vision. I am so grateful to each of you for your service on the board, especially during the challenge of the last few years, and I would be honored to serve with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. And we have one write-in submission, and this is from David Burke, and there's a common theme here. Dave Burke, 25 Parker Drive. Members of the board, I apologize that I was not able to be here in person tonight, but I wanted to write in to formally announce my candidacy for the Board of Education. As I've sought to learn about the role and responsibilities of a board member, some of you have been kind enough to meet and share your experiences with me. Others I've observed through my regular attendance at board meetings. My wife, Rachel Kirchin Burke, and I both graduated from Pittsford Sutherland in 2002. In 2020, when the pandemic began, we relocated from New York City back to Pittsford. We spent an entire year searching for a house because we were so committed to living in Pittsford and sending our 2 children, Owen and Harper, to Pittsford Central School District. We're not alone in our commitment to the Pittsford schools. The quality of our schools are a source of pride for our community and a magnet attracting young families like ours to Pittsford. PCSD remains the resourceful, high-functioning school district it was when I graduated from Sutherland 20 years ago. PCSD has an annual budget of $140 million. It employs 1,100 staff, and for the last 20 years, it's provided safety and delivered a nationally recognized level of education to 5,500 students per year. Having spent my career in the corporate world, I recognize what an incredible accomplishment this is for any organization, public or private. This track record is a direct testament to the hard work and leadership qualities of our administration, teachers, parents, and this board. Thank you for your hard work and dedication. While I've come to count on PCSD leadership, we can't take it for granted. The most effective teams I've worked with professionally were built on a foundation of trust among members. People who unite around a desire to solve problems are willing to have hard conversations with one another, disagree, and still stand together in the face of difficult decisions. This is rare. When you have it, like we do in Pittsford, it needs to be preserved and nurtured. This is why I'm running for the board. We've faced unprecedented challenges over the past few years, and we still have a rocky road ahead. I don't like that. We need to ensure the continuity of our leadership team while continuing to adapt and evolve in order to protect our children and help them reach their full potential. I do want to do my part to build on the foundation that has been laid and to ensure my children and all the children of our community continue to receive the high-quality education that I was fortunate enough to receive through the Pittsford schools. And that ends public comment. I don't have any other further comments or cards. With that, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn, please. Thanks, Renee and Jeff. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.